What's your caught in a NSFW situation at work? Please like, subscribe and comment so I can create more videos for you. A few weeks after I started at a new company, they hired a new and very pretty secretary near me. Every dude at the office was getting shot down by her, except some guy on the second floor. The guy was your typical jacked, tan, slick hair sort of guy that can win a woman over with a smile. He won her attention and every day I'd overhear him flirting with her hard over at her desk. Anyway, fast forward another couple months to some random work day. I need to go do a supplies run and my boss needed some stuff too. So we take a walk over to the small supply closet. He unlocks the door and we walk in to see the secretary and this tan guy going at it hard. There was a good few seconds of us all making direct eye contact when my boss closes the door and walks away without saying a word. I wasn't sure what to do, so just sort of go back to my desk. An hour goes by and I still haven't seen my boss or the secretary, and I'm not sure any of my co-workers would believe it if I said anything. All of a sudden my desk phone rings. The lady on the line is with HR and wants me in her office now. I get in there and see the secretary crying in one seat in the entrance area beside my boss, who is pale as a ghost. In an office a few feet away, the tan dude is having a screaming match with the HR woman. When I walk in, a similar moment occurred to the storage closet and everyone froze and locked eyes. HR woman comes out of her office and has the tan dude go into her co-worker's office while she invites me in to talk. All of a sudden, when I'm in the office with the HR lady, she starts breaking down crying. I mean sobbing and snorting everywhere. Unsure what to say or do, I ask if she's okay. She apologizes and then tells me that the tan guy is her husband. I have no idea what to do, so just kept saying, "It'll be okay," over and over. First thing that popped into my head. After a few minutes of her crying, she straightens herself out, has me confirm what my boss said happened, then told me I was good to go back to my desk. A bit later my boss comes to my desk and tells me we're going to lunch. The moment we're in his car, he lets out this huge sigh and blankly says, "I had no idea they were married." Both the husband and secretary were fired and the boss and I chuckled about the incident forever. I believe the HR woman ended up getting remarried and total gossip. So who can tell if it's true? The secretary had given the tan guy herpes. What a ride. At my last job, there was this deaf guy who was nonverbal. The company brought in an ASL translator for every meeting, which was the only time you could really interact with him face to face. Honestly a stand-up guy though. One day I'm in the washroom taking a dump, and I hear something strange in the stall next to me. The steady schlick 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 of someone jerking off. Then some grunting. So I finished up quick and left the washroom. It was just me and the masturbator in there. I checked his shoes, then stood outside and pretended to be on the phone. Turns out it was the deaf guy. I just smiled and waved when I saw him. From then on, I noticed that he went to the washroom for a suspiciously long time every day. I guess nobody told him that masturbating makes noise. Edit. Some people corrected me on my description of the man's disability. Deaf people of Reddit, what was your reaction when you discovered that erections made noise? Blind people of Reddit, what was your reaction when you realized that farts were visible? Not me, but a past co-worker, we'll call him Bob Smith. He had logged into a shared computer in our lab one day, and he pulled up Outlook, and then turned around to do something with his phone while Outlook loaded. Well, let me tell you, our corporate mail filter failed that day. I walk in to see Bob turned away from the screen, and on the screen, in the Outlook preview pane, nearly full screened, was an email, in huge letters, "Bob Smith, are you getting enough big black dick?" And of course, this lovely email was accompanied by a picture showing exactly what they were talking about, just in case you weren't sure. I try to suppress a laugh, and just say to him, "Well, Bob, are you?" He looked at me, "Am I what? What are you talking about?" I point to the screen. He can't hit that delete button fast enough. The words, "Well, are you?" semicolon with no further context for anyone else overhearing, became a running joke between us. My old married wife and kids boss had a ton of nudes on the work computer of mostly other women and occasionally himself. They were labeled mundane things like Maloney job site. Somehow he synced his personal email to the work one and I discovered he was picking up men on Craigslist. Email subject lines like "suck my cock daddy" are hard to ignore. He was such a miserable, nasty, explosively angry person and went viral for a funny house selling video. Edit. Sheesh, this blew up. Basically Tony Soprano on coke sells a house. Yep, you got it. It's not an act unless 24/7 dramatic AF is an act. OP is a she. Ex-boss is divorced and estranged from kids. Grapevine. And I highly doubt I'm the only one privy to this information or tubby time shots. Thanks for the concern though. Only got caught peripherally in this one. One of my ad guys assigned to one of our regional offices kept getting help requests from one clerical, and most of the problems were questionable at best. She obviously just wanted to see him. One day he gets a call and goes up to her cubicle and she's standing there with her pants off. He backed out of that, put her on his do not respond list until things could get straightened out, and then called me for help since nothing he had done was working. Since she wasn't my employee, I picked up the phone and called the regional director. The initial contact was something like, "Hi, regional, first name basis, you know, I've always supported casual Fridays, but don't you think pants Fridays are a little too much?" Later edit. 1. Makes no difference what the woman looked like. Or the guy for that matter. Knowing the guy in question, he would have been deeply offended and upset whether she was Miss Universe or Godzilla's spawn. Simply not germane. 2. We had another similar instance a few years later with the genders reversed. The consequences were the same. Paperwork in the file and the employee soon leaving in shame. 3. I probably should have indicated that this was more than 3 decades ago when consequences for this sort of offensive conduct were on a different scale than now. Not quite caught, and not quite NSFW, but at work, comfy on the bowl, pooping and reading. I finish up, reach for the toilet paper, and my back completely goes out on me. It felt like somebody kicked me in the spine and I couldn't move. It took me an hour to be able to move enough to wipe and get my pants up. Another hour to hobble into my boss's office to tell her where I had been, that I was in agony, and that I needed to go to the doctor. I ended up getting prescribed a month of physical therapy and therapeutic massages to get over that tragic wiping incident. Man, back pulls are the worst. You never know when they can happen, and they happen with the most mundane shit possible. Back in the early 2000s there was a NSFW prank floating around the internet. If you clicked it, a looping video of 2 guys going at it popped up on your screen and the PC speaker squawked, "Hey everybody, I'm watching gay porn." That wasn't the worst of it. If you tried to close the browser it spawned 2 more and kept spawning more if you closed those. I worked in it and thought it was a hilarious prank, so I sent it to my supervisor in an email titled, "Important System Update." We always play practical jokes on each other and this would have just been par for the course. Only problem is he thought it was legit and sent it to the whole floor. My horror when only a few moments later I hear it playing on one PC, then another. Almost everyone in the office had clicked the link. People panicked, turned off their systems, losing all their work. It was a huge shit show. Believe it or not, I never got fired and actually got promoted a year later. Edit. Wow. Did not expect this when I got home. Thank you all for the upvotes, silver, gold and hilarious comments. To answer to a couple questions. I was not promoted taking my supervisor's position. I became a supervisor in a different area of the company. I am not sure if the video exists still, but I googled and found this YouTube webpage, which is the audio, no NSFW imagery. I made a mistake on what it said as it's been a while. It actually said, "Hey everybody, I'm looking at gay porno." Telling my friend's story with her permission, of course. My friend had a big interview this day. She studied nutrition in college, and was interviewing with a hospital in Boston to work on their dietetics team. She went to the interview, and met with the hospital worker, sat down and chatted for a bit. It was going well. So the interviewer asked if she wanted a tour of the area of the hospital she would be working in. She agreed, and the hospital was beautiful, but the interviewer seemed a bit awkward during the tour. She figured this was their way of politely ending the interview when they weren't interested, and tried to brush the awkwardness off and compensate by being more energetic, which only seemed to make the interviewer even more awkward. Finally, at the end of the tour when she was leaving, the interviewer admitted that she had a lovely sweater, but there was a lacy, black thong stuck to her back from static. She had been parading around the hospital trying to talk herself up, all the while walking around with a thong displayed for all to see. Needless to say, she didn't end up working there, and to this day jokes about how if she's ever dying and we need to send her to a hospital, how she'd rather die than be admitted there. I don't care if you know the person or not, or if they need something from you, like a job. If someone has some shit stuck to them they obviously didn't intend, you bloody well tell them. I decree. Not me, but a close friend. He worked as a vet tech, cleaning kennels, walking the dogs, changing bandages, etc. He was good friends with the boss lady and she would bring her shepherd mix pups to stay in the kennel some weekends, especially if she was out of town or busy. One Sunday morning he ran up to take care of the animals and the pups were there. They loved to play, so, after cleaning and caring for the other animals, he went into their run and was tossing the ball and roughhousing with these two dogs. One dog jumped on him from behind and its paw slid into his front pocket, pulling down his pants. Right at this moment, with his pants around his ankles, one dog in front waiting and the other behind him, he realized that maybe today was not the day to go commando, especially as his boss walks in at that precise moment to see him, with her beloved puppers, hanging out in all his glory. He called me when he got home laughing and crying. His boss simply took the dogs and walked out without saying a word. Fortunately, it wasn't a rom-com movie, so he was able to explain the next day. Her only comment was, "Let's remember to wear underwear from now on, okay?" I don't know if this counts, but I worked for a call center a couple years ago and when we asked someone their name we had to say, "And who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today?" Well, for some fucking reason why, I have no idea, I asked the lady on the phone, "And who do I have the pleasure of sleeping with today?" The girl who sits next to me looked at me wide-eyed and then I realized what I said and apologized profusely. The lady on the phone just started cracking up and then told me her name was Marianne. Edit. To answer the important question, I am sorry to say I did not sleep with Marianne. Also, thanks for the silver kind friend. My first day, working at Rite Aid. I had to answer a phone at the cash register. "Thank you for calling Walmart. How can I help you?" No fucking clue why I asked that. Never worked at Walmart before, so everyone involved was stumped. I was chilling at my grandpa's work between school and swimming lessons, mainly to eat at the cafeteria. He worked in the government of my shitty country and had an old computer in his office, but him being old he wasn't using it much. So me being a 12-year horny pervert and having access to internet for the first time in my life found out about internet porn. I only watched it, but nonetheless there was a lot of disturbing porn traffic coming in through my grandpa's PC. This went on for months until my grandpa got in trouble for using a government computer for porn. I wasn't allowed to come to his work after that. Edit. Side story. Once I got on my grandpa's colleague's PC. He was like a 35-year-old dude and I was browsing around the shit he had. I found a hidden folder and found something that left me puzzled for years. It was a video of a woman with a huge vagina and a bald dude. He started out slow, just some fisting. Little bit of fisting, nothing serious, just some casual fisting. Then in went his foot. Turns out that was a build-up. Dude ended up sticking his bald head in her monster puss. Literal reverse birth. I could never unsee that, and interacting with the dude became weird afterwards. I was tech support for a web hosting company. One if you must know. Call clicks off. Next call connects. I go through the motions of "Thank you for calling blah blah, could I take your account number please?" I tap in the number. "And your name?" "Thank you. Good afternoon Miss Smith. Could you just confirm the domain name you're calling about today?" That question was asked because a fair few customers have multiple domains registered. And I'm busy typing notes on the previous call, and haven't even looked at her account yet. Oh, she says. Can't you see it at your end? Well, yes, but I generally ask the caller to confirm just so we're clear which account has the problem and there's no confusion. I still haven't seen the domain name in the account. So I take a look. Okay, so it's, RK, www.boomimoistpanties.com ? She volunteers in a half whisper. Okay then. And what seems to be the problem today? I reply as I click the URL and realize I'm being paid to look at porn. This one doubles as an excellent no, it really isn't what it looks like. Doing field work in Oklahoma, aka the deer tick capital of the world. Had been picking the little bastards off me all day and had already had Rocky Mountain spotted fever once that summer. None of my other female crewmates were home when I got, so I grabbed lone male crewmate and asked him to check my back for ticks. Turns out his girlfriend was coming down to visit that weekend. And she got in a little early. And walked in. To see me, bent over a table with the back of my shirt pulled up and my bra unclasped, and her boyfriend's nose about an inch from my back. Cue 2 sets of horrified deer in headlights expressions. I told that story at their wedding a couple weeks ago, so I don't think I screwed anything up too badly. The walk-in freezer at the Papa John's in Alamogordo, NM is a dirty place. I wasn't the only person busted with another pizza delivery person doing NSFW things. But, the Domino's freezer in that town isn't any cleaner. Edit. Okay, so the story of this is, one of the weather forecasters at Holloman AFB met the manager of the PJs one night at a bar, and ended up with a job as a delivery driver while he delivered something else to the manager on the side. We were all pretty poor in the weather shop, and the shop manager oked it, so more of us got hired delivering when we weren't forecasting. One of the delivery girls was really hot, and liked me too, so that became a thing. One night, the manager and her BF were closing the shop, and my GF and I were just about to get off shift. We got back from different deliveries at the same time and got ourselves all worked up in the parking lot before we went inside to cash out. The manager was in her office, on her desk, with her boyfriend in there too, pants around his ankles. So we couldn't cash out, and didn't want to go into the backseat of her Cavalier, so we went into the freezer. The manager came in about 10 minutes later, and tried to pretend that she hadn't just been doing the same thing. We cashed out, went home, and had more fun while we ate some breadsticks. I work nights in the reception at a small hotel. Once this older guy came down with his laptop and requested help because he couldn't make his porn work. So I had to update the guy's Flash player to make his Filipino porn work. It was a bit awkward, but I'm not gonna deny some old guy his porn. So I fixed his computer and the dude was happy. Edit. Did wash my hands after fixing the computer. Did not receive any extra tip, because that's not really a thing in my country of residence. He did give us a 5-star review though, with my name listed. Used to work in a combination cafe bar restaurant. Came in at 6 AM to open up the cafe portion of the business to discover the bar is a total mess. Empty wine bottles and broken glasses everywhere, all the beer taps sticky, or 3/4 empty bottle of tequila, which we have never sold, sitting on the side, etc. Go into the office to drop off my bag, and find our head chef asleep in his underwear. Wake him up and he mutters something about not meaning to stay so late and bolts out of the place. Thoroughly confused and anticipating backlash from head office if I don't work out what the fuck is going on, I decide to check the cameras, and see, married, head chef and, also married, but not to each other, restaurant manager getting wasted, trashing the place, and having sex at about 2 AM the previous night. For a while I was sort of dating our secretary. One day after work, after everyone had gone home, she came into my office and we ended up having a great time on my desk. About halfway through I picked her up and pushed her against the glazed glass wall of my office while she was straddling me. After I got tired, she turned around facing the glass and we continued until I finished. I had forgotten about the security cameras in the hallways and entrance. About 3 days later I get to work and there is a DVD plus R on my desk, with a note. Hope you had fun, and it was of the camera that points almost directly at my office because it is on a corner. You could a lot more than I thought you could through those glazed windows. Security guys are either blackmailing me or a bro. Hope you had fun always sounds like it could be a compliment, or a threat. This happened just last week. I was trying to find a stock image to use on our newest company blog post. I found one on Google Images, followed it to the original site and clicked the download button for the high-res version. Next thing I know, I'm on the browser site with 3 other new windows open on my desktop to other porn sites. I froze in horror. Lucky for me, my sound was off and I'm in my own office with my screens facing away from the door. The image site looked so harmless. And now I know we have no restrictions on our internet at all. Edit, obligatory thanks for my first silver, kind internet person. No restrictions does not equal no logging or no adminit alerts. Be careful. I was at work. We were closed, and I was the only one still there. We close at 2 p.m., and sometimes delivery guys forget and still show up to drop off packages. I had just gone to the bathroom and put a small vibrator in my panties, walked out, and the doorbell rang. Without thinking, I went to the front and opened the door. I kind of froze when the delivery guy walked in and started toward the back where they usually leave the packages, because I'm standing there and you can hear the buzzing. I had to follow him so that I could sign for the package once he dropped it off. I'm not sure if he heard it buzzing, but it was super quiet in there with no one around, so I'm fairly certain he did. What makes this worse is that I'm the regional director, so if he mentioned it to anyone else the next time he delivered, he would be mentioning it to my direct reports. No one ever said anything to me about it. Another time, I was texting my boyfriend and one of my employees at the same time. I messaged my BF telling him I really need some dick. A couple of hours later, he hadn't responded to that particular message, so I looked at my messages to be sure I sent it, and noticed it wasn't in my message history with him. Sudden realization hits, so I checked my texts with my employee, and sure shit, I had sent it to her. I immediately sent her an apology message, and she responded back saying that she and her wife were at Kohl's when she got the message and that she busted out laughing and decided not to respond, but to let me figure it out on my own that I had fucked up. Good thing she's a lesbian and not a male employee, or that could have been very bad. TL. DR at the bottom. My old boss, who is married, has several kids, and lives a relatively successful life, used to have a shed that had an attic that was always locked. One day I was getting some fertilizer and mulch out of the shed and I noticed the attic door was propped open. My boss was off the property and I decided to sneak inside to take a peek. The moment I walked up the stairs there were 2 massive panels of plywood that had cutouts of nudes from Playboys and collaged together to make a giant 5x20 porn wall. A little further down he had like 2 magazine racks with literally hundreds of Playboys and an entire cabinet filled with VHS tapes and DVDs. Like it was his Jack Shack or something. Edit, I have a video I took of the porn wall I can upload once I find it in my phone. Edit 2. Found it. Here is the video of the Sanctuary, NSFW. Jiffy web page. Sorry for the quality, I recorded it a few years ago. All that to say that I was accused of stealing one of his VHS tapes. Like the dude literally walked up to me, a high school student, and was like, "Did you steal anything from my attic?" I just played dumb and acted like I had no idea what he was talking about. He called my parents at one point and told them what he thought had happened. My parents believed me for the most part. The craziest part of the whole thing is the tape showed up 2 weeks later. Turns out his adult son just dropped by and borrowed it without telling his dad. On the bright side, my boss called my parents and apologized and told them about the misunderstanding. I ended up quitting not too long after that. Some afterthoughts. Having a secret porn attic. Okay, fine. I get it. But the dude got straight up crafty and went full blown grandma making a porn collage like it was a quilt or something. The guy literally had a desk with an ongoing project. He had an X-Acto knife, because his isn't precise enough I guess, and the man had some of those glue sticks like it was a middle school art project. I can already see the conversations he has with his wife. "Honey, if you need me I'll be out in the shed doing a little woodworking. TL. DR. Boss had a locked door in his shed. One day it was left open. I walked up there to find hidden Playboy cutouts meticulously glued onto a couple of pieces of plywood. He accused me of stealing one of his VHS tapes, only to find out that his adult son had borrowed it without asking. A little over a decade ago, I was working as a quality assurance tester at Sony. Rather than slogging my way through unfinished video games, though, I was tasked with watching movies that had been released on Blu-ray, making sure that all of their various features functioned as expected when accessed on the PlayStation 3. While that might sound like an amazing job, it was actually less enjoyable than you'd think, both because I didn't get to choose what I watched, and because I'd have to endure repeated viewings for every subtitled track, alternate cut, and ill-conceived piece of commentary that was included on the discs. One day, I was assigned the movie Eyes Wide Shut. If you're unfamiliar with the film, here's what you need to know. Stanley Kubrick was, and still is, famed as being one of the most driven and detail-oriented directors to grace the silver screen. If anyone else had made Eyes Wide Shut, though, critics likely would have decried it as a filmmaker's excuse to surround themselves with dozens of naked women. There's a scene, for example, that's literally just Tom Cruise walking through a graphic orgy. Each person involved is wearing a mask, but nothing else. Anyway, as with any of the films that I was assigned, I had to watch this 1.5 dozen times, at the very least, and given that my desk wasn't the most private of locations, my screen was completely visible to anyone who might happen to pass by. Word quickly got around that I was watching pornography, which prompted my supervisor to approach me from behind. "Max, what are you doing?" he asked. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, but held up the movie's case. "It's Eyes Wide Shut, comma. Oh." He stood there for a little while, staring, until the manager walked over. "What are you guys watching?" "Eyes Wide Shut," we both said. "Oh." Over the course of about 10 minutes, my desk was slowly surrounded by the entire management team, up to and including the department head. When the orgy scene finally finished, they all glanced around at each other, chuckled, then hurried off to focus on whatever work they had been neglecting. It was something of relief for me, and not as you might be thinking because I didn't like having my superiors crowd around me, but because I had been seated with my head at crotch level for the entire showing. Like I said, I kept my eyes glued to the screen. TLDR, watching pornography at work saw me getting surrounded by dicks. The other crappy part is Kubrick was known for overshoots. He would routinely film way more than he needed and trim to fit his vision. He passed in the editing process for that film, and his wife said leave it as is, which is why it's so lengthy. I was having sex with my girlfriend on and around my desk, on a Sunday, office closed, and I hear the front door, which is about 20 m around the corner from my desk, start unlocking. We both freak out. She grabs my shirt and puts it on and hides under my desk to change, leaving me to walk up to the front door shirtless while my boss walked in and explained to him that I needed a second. He waited at the front door for about 2 minutes with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, trying not to burst out laughing, as my GF came around the corner fully dressed and had me introduce her to my boss. He teased me about it for a bit, but I think he found it hilarious. Never told him I had sex on his desk, but I'll always know that there were butt cheeks on his keyboard. Is it weird that for all of these office romances I always pictured under Mifflin Scranton? This happened about 10 to 12 years ago at this small, 60 people, company I work for. A typical accidental reply all instead of a forward. Not as good as other replies in this thread. Anyways, this lady replied all to something with a joke that the punchline was a picture of this girl pulling her shirt up. I've tried unsuccessfully for about 10 minutes to find the joke as I can't remember it. Maybe someone here knows what I'm talking about. So I'm sitting there, open the email, then 2 seconds later hear her screaming, "Oh god, no. No. It was hilarious." We're both still there, but I suppose she got a firm talking to at the time. I'm a photographer. I was doing a photo shoot for a beauty clinic and the service I was shooting was an orange skin reduction in the upper thighs. So the model comes out of the changing room with a robe from the clinic, And when we were discussing the shoot and giving directions, she dropped the robe on purpose and was completely naked and cool with. She starts asking me directions completely naked and moving around the space. This was a fit girl with an awesome body and I genuinely felt like in a porno. I was working late one night with my back then girlfriend, now wife. We were alone and she moved her laptop to work next to me in my office. Glorified title for a slightly bigger desk facing the other desks of the team, so it was an open office with no walls. Long story short, we ended having sex over my desk, pushing papers out of the way for dramatic effect, and everything went fine. Except that a few days later my boss very casually tells me, you know, I installed security cameras, just be careful when working late. Since my ex-boss was a pervert with a porn addiction, I'm sure he saved our sex tape. Got busted having sex with a serv in the wine liquor storage room on the opening night of a new bar in town. I was working there only that night to ensure the bar ran smoothly. When I was done I sat down next to a nice server. She and I talked about our jobs in the past and what would come of this place. We agreed that there'd be a lot of banging be done by the staff and we started sharing our stories of having sex at work with people from work. At one point I mentioned who'd be the first people to have sex in this place. She suggested it could be us, so we decided it should be us. We thought the liquor storage room would be the best place because it's in the staff area. You need a code to get into the staff area and another to access the booze room. So not many people would be able to enter and we'd hear them coming, or so we thought. One of the night managers enters, sees us, says, I'm just here for vodka. Please don't knock over the shelves, and she left. All in all a pretty cool experience. We had some beers after and had a laugh about our accomplishment. Met her and banged her on the same night in the storage room of a bar. Then had beers together after and she wasn't completely disappointed. Damn dog. High fives all around. I used to fix cell phones. The worst is when somebody wanted you to see their nudes. They would accidentally open gallery when handing it to me. Lot of less scrupulous techs would look through the gallery for nudes when it was a hot chick. I could get that shit for free online and I didn't want to risk pissing off a customer. I didn't get paid enough for that shit, so I avoided that, but when you were doing data transfer sometimes you couldn't get around seeing it. We also had a dude come in periodically with literal shit clogging up his phone. One of those Kyocera waterproof flip phones. He was a local playwright and I found out later a friend of my grandpa. Pretty sure he was shoving it up his ass. I don't know how else you routinely get shit embedded into your keypad. Boob sweat damaged phones. Women would come in the summer, pull their phone straight from their cleavage and hand it over. We would open it up and there would be rancid boob sweat inside. A clear brownish yellow fluid. It smelled fucking terrible. Still not as bad as horse piss girl though. We went through a lot of hand sanitizer. A little bit of backstory on this one. I have a porn album on my phone. I'm not obsessed with it or anything, but sometimes the Wi-Fi goes out and I still wanna get my nut off. The cover image for the album is a completely blank screen and the title is pornography. Seriously, dude, don't click on this. I figured that title and the lack of a cover image would be enough to sate the curiosity of anyone snooping on my phone so they wouldn't click on it. Now that you know this, into the story. So I was showing a coworker some pictures of a sunrise or something else cool I saw that morning and he takes my phone to scroll through them. Then, when he gets to the end of them, he exits the album and starts looking at my other photos. At this point, I'm getting pretty nervous, but basically freeze up and don't know what to even say. I try to ask him to give me my phone back, but I can't even manage to choke out any words anymore. He looks through a couple of albums of relatively innocent stuff before seeing my good old porn album. I'm embarrassed at this point, but I figure he'll just awkwardly give me back my phone and we'll pretend this never happened. Right. Wrong. I don't know the logic behind this, but he clicks on it, and in the split second before it loaded, his face had the look of, oh god, I just majorly fucked up all over it. Right as he clicks, I managed to say wait on before he sees around 10 or 15 images that I don't want to describe in detail. I snatched my phone from him and nervously said sorry and took a bathroom break to catch my breath and get away from him. When I got back, He looked at me differently, but he didn't say anything about it and we pretended it never happened. Who the hell just starts browsing someone's phone when being showed a photo? I make sure to only swipe it given permission to do so. Long post, TL, DR at bottom. Worked at an amusement park during high school and was dating a fellow employee. Everyone dated everyone there. We would usually have sex in my car after work at a secluded spot about 15 minutes away. However, she had to be home in a timely manner one night, so we didn't have time to go to the spot. Thus my high school horny self decided that we would probably be fine pulling in behind a shed next to the parking lot of amusement park. Turns out that it wasn't fine. Mid-bone there was a knock on the window followed by a long pause as I feared the worst. Then the amusement park security guard then asked me to open the door, to which I said, "Can I please put pants on first?" He chuckled as he said yes. Then we were put in the back of his car and driven back to the security office where they called both of our parents. We were minors. We were placed in separate rooms with no doors. Mine was the first room in the hallway. Her parents arrived first. I had never met her parents, and they had to walk past my room in order to get to her room. As her father passed by the door, I received a stare of death more intense than I could ever imagine. During the next 15 minutes as I awaited the arrival of my parents, I contemplated if I was going to be murdered by my own family or if her dad was going to get me first. My mom finally arrives, and I am allowed to leave the security office. I think that I am going to be in serious trouble and have a calm before the storm feeling in my gut. The first thing my mom says to me is, "Yeah, I kind of guessed things were getting hot and heavy when I saw all those ickies on your neck." On the drive home, I am wondering if she's just leaving the ass blasting to my dad. When I get home, dad is already asleep, so I just go to bed. Next day, I am in my room and awaken to my dad knocking on the door. I think to myself, here it is, I'm fucked. He comes in and says, "Here, I think you could use this," and hands me a box of condoms and a book titled The Joy of Sex by Dr. Alex Comfort. He then leaves the room, and nothing else was ever said about it. I was blown away, but I was still sure that I would be fired from my job after doing this. Regardless, I went into work the next day. There's a gate outside the amusement park where you scan in. If you are fired, your badge won't work and they will send someone out to get you and officially fire you. To my complete astonishment, badge swipes right away and I just go to work like it's another day. Every day following I always get nervous as they swipe my badge, but it worked every time. I guess they were just that desperate for employees. I never saw or talked to the girl again though. TL. DR. Horny teen. Got busted having sex in back of car at work parking lot. Somehow didn't get fired. That was probably a weekly occurrence. They can't fire you or they'd have no one. I was working a construction job a long time ago and I was watching this beautiful woman who was walking down the street. Gorgeous legs, a short skirt and a low-cut blouse. I couldn't stop staring. But I probably should have, because I wasn't paying attention and I got slammed in the head by a 2x4 that was leaning against something and fell down. I was wearing my hard hat thankfully, but I was dazed for a moment and had to sit down. It was then that I learned to appreciate work safety. I work in IT, and have for quite a while. Fairly frequently people will ask if I can recover data from old failed hard drives. I used to do data recovery, and generally it's a pretty task easy to get their stuff back. Anytime anyone asks me to recover, I always make sure to let them know I'll see everything that's on that drive. Me. Just so you're aware, I'll see anything that's in this hard drive. Them. Yeah, okay. Me. Anything. Them. Got it. Me. Making eye contact every single thing. You can usually see the wheels turning at that point, trying to weigh out how important the pictures of their kids are compared to me seeing what kind of porn they're into, or their own homemade albums. Generally doesn't stop them though. I've recovered the HR lady's honeymoon sex video and pics. A business owner lost a bunch of accounting stuff in a drive and I found his office manager's, his daughter, personal nudes folder. That was an awkward discussion when he got those files back. A girl in my office gave me an external drive to recover, then specifically told me to look for her nudes folder. and encouraged me to browse it, and to let her know my thoughts. Which I did. She's actually a quite talented boudoir photographer. Basically, half of my office, I've either seen them nude, or know what kind of kinky shit they're into. When I recover their data, it all goes on an external for them to keep and sort through. All of it, every bit. I never say a word about it, I just act like it wasn't there. Occasionally someone will ask if I saw anything weird, or anything that stood out. I always reply with nope, pretty standard stuff. In 14 years I've had one person with zero porn on a recovered drive. Absolutely zero. I've never been so proud, impressed and confused in my life. In 14 years I've had one person with zero porn on a recovered drive. Absolutely zero. I've never been so proud, impressed and confused in my life. Wait till they give you the other drive. I used to work at this really small advertising agency as a copywriter. We had this new client that was a Chinese restaurant that was opening up in the area. We were making a website and I had a little bit of downtime. So the graphic designer asked me if I could help her find some good stock photo images for her. The name of the place involved chopsticks, and obviously being a Chinese restaurant, chopsticks were important. So, I start looking around for interesting pictures of chopsticks. I came across this picture, canned stock photo webpage, NSFW, of a woman pinching her nipple with a pair of chopsticks. Of course that happened to be at the same time that my boss came to check up and see what I was doing. Eventually he understood what happened and thought it was hilarious, but at first he totally thought that I was just looking at porn at work. LMAO, I've run into some risque stock images before, but usually you are prepared if it's a somewhat NSFW related search term, but chopsticks? That would have caught me really off guard lol. Used to be a lifeguard and decided to take a break to walk the dog in the bathroom. Only had some family bathrooms, not really any men or women designated areas. So I sit down and whip out the old mobile device and start yanking the chain, when all of a sudden the door begins to open up and a younger dad who doesn't know how to knock, my fault I didn't lock it, decides that he is gonna walk right in. He then looks at me as I've got my dick in one hand and my phone in the other and turns to his wife, who couldn't see me, and says, "Let's not use this one. It's pretty dirty." He backed out and closed the door. I have never felt so relieved but so traumatized and a little mad. Mostly because he called me dirty lol. Edit. Just wanna say that this was about 6 years ago when I was 15 and single. I don't think he necessarily called you dirty. I might have been just an excuse to save your ass. This was this Christmas gone. I work at a cinema, went into an auditorium to clean after a film had just finished. There was a couple, mid-teens, in the top right well after the credits had finished. I could just see the girl's head bobbing up and down over the dude's crotch. For some reason they hadn't thought maybe to stop at the sound of the doors opening or the cleaning lights coming on. The guy made eye contact with me and immediately nudged the girl to stop. I did a 180 to avoid any more awkward blowjob eye contact. They followed shortly after and left, red-faced the whole time. To top it off, this had been a kid's film, The Grinch. I accidentally left a DVD in my laptop of a movie with a very specific sexual theme. Not exactly porn, but only people with that specific sexual interest would know about it or recognized it because there was no cover art and the title isn't sexual. So given that, when I brought my laptop to work and realized I left it inside, I just put it halfway through the stack of CDs on my desk with intention to take it home later. I forgot. Flash forward a week, I come into work and the DVD is at the top of the stack. I was mortified but slightly excited because whoever did it recognized the movie and clearly left it there for me to see. I put it back in the middle of the stack. The next day it was back at the top. This went on for days until I finally brought it home because I came to my senses and realized it was super risky. During this whole time, I was snooping around the office trying to find out who it was. I had a huge crush on one of my co-workers and there was certainly chemistry between us, but he was in a relationship. Hoped it was him but never figured out any useful intel. Flash forward again 6 months or so. Co-worker is no longer in a relationship. We start dating. I find out he was the one putting the movie on the top of the stack. Flash forward 8 years to today. We are about to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary. Sex is still great. This is not mine, but it's too good not to share. Enjoy. Credit to you, don't remember eating. Original comment. Reddit webpage. 2 jobs ago, there was an assistant director in my division who was known for being absolutely incompetent and useless. Let's call her Jill. Jill couldn't have done the job of her direct reports with any amount of training. Naturally, the rest of us joked about how she kept her job. Realistically, it was probably because she managed the division budget and kept costs low, which meant our raises either sucked or were non-existent, and buying new hardware software to better perform our jobs was extremely difficult. So, Jill was pretty universally reviled. Therefore, a few of us started joking that it wasn't a tightwad budgeting that got her the position, but the fact that she'd been with the company for decades and had offered up that hairy old snatch to all the dirty old men on the top floor since the beginning. The fact that Jill was an old maid supported this, and we delighted in making up stories about how she was being used whenever she did something to piss everyone off, which was often. Fast forward to the holiday season of 2008. The company had a surprisingly good year. Its business actually benefited from the downturn, and had announced a big Christmas party for the whole company, thousands, at a conference center in town. It was a big to-do, with open bars, huge meat carving stations, seafood buffets, and an army of waitstaff walking around with champagne and petit fours platters. Big cash and prize giveaways running over $1 mil total value, HR bragged on the flyer. 3 live bands and a DJ in separate ballrooms, and the main stage was a well-known country act. So, with all of that, the C-level guys wanted a chance to address the crowd to drunkenly puff up themselves and the company, and took to the main stage during the band set break. It was pretty late and everyone was toasted. They'd already had last call, so everyone could start sobering up for the drive home. Now, before I get to the incident, a little backstory, the CFO was not at our party. He was in New York. Our company was in the Southwest, partying with and circle jerking with other hotshits in the financial realm. Despite this, he wanted to be the one to brag to the crowd at the party about the financial numbers. Another part of my division managed video production and conferencing, and they were asked to make this possible. They recommended he pre-record a video and have it played at the party, but he insisted that they make it happen live with two-way audio and video like they do on CNN. To make a long story less long, they miraculously got the budget approved. Virgil, who with some other directors were accompanying the CFO in New York, to hire a local company in New York to set up the monitor, camera, and sound in the CFO's hotel suite. On our end, our guys set up a theater size projection screen and made the audio portion work with the onstage PA. Ridiculous effort for a guy to talk for 5 minutes just so he could hear and see the crowd cheering back at him. So, as many people as can be packed into the main ballroom are gathered, and the CEO gives his pep talk, all these new clients, woohoo. Followed by the CIO, successful security initiatives, yay. Then at the pre-arranged time, our guys get the go-ahead to turn on the feed to the CFO's hotel suite. The next few things happened extremely quickly, but it's forever burned in my memory. We are greeted by a big, white, jiggling, gyrating ass, framed by a pinstriped shirt and black slacks. We are also greeted by telltale grunts, moans, and squishing sounds. The horrified gasps and howls of laughter and applause on our side must have blasted loudly through the audio on his end, because the CFO almost immediately turned around, projecting a perfectly normal white old man dick that was nevertheless at least 6 feet large on the giant screen before he quickly stepped off camera, which revealed the backside of Jill. Couldn't mistake her huge mass of dyed orange hair for anyone else, in the middle of standing up. She then also turned around to see what was happening. Not too bright, remember. Her dick flailing around in a semi-chub. You read that correctly. The howling laughter briefly turned into chatter as everyone asked each other if we'd really just seen what we thought we'd seen. To wrap up, the CFO was forced into retirement, Jill was laid off with a big severance, and the video conferencing team was raked over the coals for not calling the CFO on the phone before going live with feed, but none of them were fired. Requisite edit. Thanks for popping my gold cherry, whomever you are. Now what I do with it. Also, my highest upvoted comment is now about an unexpected penis. I used to be a bouncer at a bar in college. One night I was stationed outside the washroom, beside the stage, overlooking the dance floor. One girl was visiting the washroom far too frequently, and started grazing up against me, so I took the hint and we started talking. After she made it clear she wanted to get fucked right there, and realizing I wasn't going to be off work for a few hours, I took her to the basement where the manager's office is and we have a small lounge with couches for after hours activities. However, one of the busboys noticed us on the couch without recognizing me, and told the owner two drunk people were hooking up in the basement. He comes downstairs and yells before entering the room, which scared me into leaping up. He entered to see my fully erect penis swinging like a doorstopper spring and shielded his eyes like he had accidentally stared at the sundae. We still laugh about it to this day. One job pretty early on in my career, I worked at an online ad agency in Philly, in the very early days of online advertising, late 90s, and one of our clients was Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, it was a known fact around the account team for Dick's that whenever we had to search the client's term online for anything, we had to be super specific, and specify Dick's Sporting Goods, because it was still the early days of the internet. So search engines weren't quite as sophisticated as using Google is now with default safe controls and filtered results and all. No, it was still kind of like the Wild West then. So all sorts of interesting results would come back on generic terms such as just Dicks, or, it's kind of like just using Bing nowadays. In case you don't get where I'm going here, back then, if you put just Dicks into Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves or Yahoo or even early Google, the image search results were just a wall of penises. So anyway, all of us knew from experience what search terms to use, all of us that is except the new girl to the team, who was fresh out of school, and super naive, and just ever so slightly annoying. No, she was not aware of this universal rule of thumb yet. So one day when she was putting together some slides for some presentation, and asked where she could find an image of the client's logo to put on one of the slides, my shouted response to her over the walls of our cubicles was, search for it online, just search Dicks, it's the first result, and 10 seconds goes by until we all heard her scream oh my god. In disgust, which was met by all of us bursting into laughter. All of us, that was, except my boss, who did not appreciate my attempt at levity at the new girl's expense, and had a sit-down discussion with me about it. Still totally worth it, though. I had that job for 3 years, but I'll have that story for the rest of my life. I remember before Dick's bought Dicks.com, I was with my grandma and searched for the website to see the sales. I proceeded to expose me and grandma to images of Dicks while she's stifling a laugh and I'm just noping out the room like 10-year-old me can't deal with this. Good times. I work in unemployment, and we frequently have to send porn pictures to the state showing what our clients' ex-employees were looking at work that caused them to get fired. One of my co-workers sent me a funny case they were working on, and since our system is extremely outdated, it freezes constantly. Of course it froze on one of the porn pictures right as my manager walked up to talk to me. 2 people stood up to talk to her and got a full view of it, and the manager of the person that sent it to me happened to walk up to talk to my manager at the same time. So now I've got porn frozen on my screen with 4 people around my cubicle. Luckily, this is a completely normal occurrence at my job, so my 60-plus-year-old lady manager just said oh dear, another one, and everyone laughed it off. Didn't make it any less awkward for me though. A new girl completed a trial shift and was invited to the Christmas party because the owner thought it would be a good way for everyone to get to know her. I, her manager, spent the majority of the night hanging out with her and we later went home and slept together. We thought we had been discreet when leaving the party, but apparently our drunken selves weren't as subtle as we thought and everyone knew the next day. Naturally, she was mortified and was freaking out, but I was able to reassure her that it would blow over and I wouldn't treat her any different to any of the other employees. She happily worked there for another 2 years before moving back to the US. I used to go into a storage area to read during my lunch breaks at an old job. It was split into several smaller areas, but there were half walls. They didn't go all the way up to the ceiling between them. People came in from time to time, but rarely into the rear room where I sat, so if the door opened I never paid it any mind. One time I heard someone come in and go into the adjacent room. I just kept reading. A few minutes later I heard a second person come in. You can guess the rest. Just imagine graphic blowjob sounds, and me huddled in the adjacent room. They left separately, so the scene ends with me trying not to breathe, on the other side of a wall probably no more than 4 feet away from a coworker cleaning up her chin. I knew who they were, I heard them talking, but never told either of them I'd been in there. Worked the stockroom at Kohl's and was dating one of my coworkers. One day she gets on the ladder to pull something off the top shelf, which is normal, and seeing this I come to help, as the item is large. I look up while standing below her and not only do I realize that I can see up her skirt, but she isn't wearing any panties. She notices me noticing and says with a smirk, "Save those thoughts for later, honey." I had joined a new job along with my, now ex-GF back in 2010. We were part of a 20-strong batch of new employees undergoing a month-long training session. We had multiple trainers but one of them was especially cute and bubbly. Let's call her Elle. The training room was a large rectangular room with 10 computers along the 2 longer walls. It had a whiteboard projector screen in the front with a floor-to-ceiling curtained glass panel as the last wall. My GF would always sit in the front and I preferred sitting at the last computer in the right-hand row. I was kinda smitten by her because she would always have a smile on whenever it was my turn for a presentation or to give an answer. One day, we were going through a long instructional video in the dock and training room. Everyone was struggling to stay awake after 15 minutes into the hour-long corporate video. Elle was standing to the side near the screen but as she did not have a chair to sit on, she walked to the back of the room and stood beside my chair with her back resting against the wall. A couple of minutes later I feel someone brushing my hair. I used hard styling gel for my then short hair. I quickly turned my head around and saw her smiling at me as she touched my hair. Before I could react more, Elle said something to the effect of "nice hair" and smiled at me. I turned around and pretended to watch the video as Elle continued to run her fingers through my hair. It was an immensely arousing moment and I was glad the room was dark and my GF hadn't bothered to turn around. Somehow this is hotter than all the more explicit responses to this thread. Brought a date back to my office after a wedding. It was closest. Had incredible sex on my desk. Then turned around and remembered that there is a friggin' camera. Looked dead into it. Gave a thumbs up. And went for round to haha. And X200B. I work in a small company and know the owner very well. I told him about it and he laughed and promised he would delete the footage and not watch it. Now if he actually did that is up for debate. My Phil while visiting us was using my iPad for browsing YouTube. Unbeknownst to him that YouTube stores their history. Videos included animals having sex, nude tribal from Amazon and all the possible profanity under YouTube. I am still in 2 minds to introduce him to Pornhub, so he can see some real action. Please, don't think in his entire married life he had sex more than few times. Feel sad for him. Edit, sorry not related to work. I was working as a lactation consultant and I was writing an educational module for nurses. I wanted to find an image of a certain breast shape, which I knew was a recipe through porn activity. I actually have zero interest in porn. I don't look at it, my browser history is boring. But my friend walked into my office after a risky click and I was like a teenager trying to close Windows and turn my laptop as she walked to my desk. I think she thought I was looking at porn. A few years ago I was dating a wonderful woman who worked alongside me at my then workplace, a progressive company with a brand new office building. One thing that comes with brand new buildings designed by forward-thinking companies is the concept of a lactation room. A small quiet room with a locking door. We had one on every floor. It was summer in the American South and I was a bit of an outdoorsman, so I was pulling ticks off myself pretty regularly. On the day in question, I had woken up to find that I had missed a tick embedded in the fleshy part of my butt. No big deal. They take about 24 hours to infect you with anything, and this one wasn't swollen, so I sort of twisted around in the mirror and pulled the fucker off. Except I didn't pull the right way. And the head of the tick, so far as I could tell, stayed firmly buried in my patator. The head of the tick has all the bad parts of the tick, if you're generous enough to pretend that some parts of ticks aren't bad, and I knew I had to get it out. But the angle and the location and the fact that I have an ass that would put a Wookiee to shame all conspired against me. I ran out of tick digging time. I had to get to work. I showed up at my girlfriend's cubicle with 2 sets of tweezers and very politely invited her to the lactation room with me, where I dropped my drawers and laid face down on the floor and begged her to extract the wretched thing. She labored there for some minutes, I with my tortured gluteus uplifted, the lactation room door with its deadbolt thrown, and through her soft ministrations and from the bottomless well of kindness in her soul, bit by bit, she pulled half an arachnid out of my ass at 9 o'clock in the morning. We tied it up and left, and that's the closest I've ever been to being caught at work, because unlike you disgusting people I am neither a reprobate nor a degenerate. I dunno. Tick but nurse extraction medical fetish sex seems to be pretty degenerate. Fucking my assistant on the desk in my office. Her name was Lisa from Puerto Rico. I wasn't going to have sex with her. She kept giving me the fuck me eyes. I'm only so strong to resist. The good news at the time I was single and not married. I got caught in my technician walked in the room to ask me about a client's server. She was sitting on my cheap Craigslist desk with her legs wrapped around me. He walked in, made momentary eye contact and watched right the fuck back out. I asked him in the future if you could knock on my office door first. Circa 2004.